So genetic protocol does nutritional genetic testing. So what that means is we check the genes to figure out how our bodies make the enzymes that allow us to use our food. So your body is, are there people coming in?
Yes.
Are they able to see this? Ask them if they can see it.
Can you guys see this?
So your body is made of mitochondria and DNA. So in the nucleus of your cells, you have 23 pairs of chromosomes, right? And half come from mom and half come from dad. You have what's called somatic cells. So where are your somatic cells? In the nucleus? Where?
Everywhere.
Everywhere. Okay. And then you have what? You either have a uterus with what?
Ovaries.
Or you have a giant.
Mm-hmm.
I did not draw it to scale, right? Okay. So what is it? You have one other type of cell, somatic cells or
Germ.
yeah, gametes. So that's the egg and the sperm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we're talking about every one of your cells has 23 pairs of chromosomes that you got one each from mom and dad, and those are fueled by mitochondria. So mitochondria are like the power plant that tell your DNA what to do. Now, when you look at those DNA, they look like an X, right? And they split apart. Those X's, if you looked at it on its side, it kind of looks like, almost like a Fibonacci sequence, because it's rolled around something we call histones. So if I took your DNA, histones form like a spool, and it wraps around like that, okay? You have little tags hanging off of your DNA called acetyl groups and methyl groups. Those basically, a simple way to think of what they do is if your DNA, it forms what's called an octamer or an 8-part group that's wrapped around like this. When you acetylate it, when you put acetyl groups, can you all see this? You can't see what I'm doing, Mason. When it's wrapped around like this and you acetylate it, it relaxes it so you can get in there and make a copy of it. So you're basically just unrolling your DNA, tightening this up so it's packaged, or unpackaging it. So God or the universe, whatever you subscribe to, made us so perfect that our DNA, this is the analogy I used the other morning, it's like if you went to Nordstrom's and it's Christmas time, and you took every single item in Nordstrom's and you had to line it up on the sidewalk and then wrap it and make it so condensed that you could get it into Santa's sleigh to deliver it that one night. And then you had to come back and gather it all back up and bring it back and redistribute it perfectly across Nordstrom's. That's how precise we are. So we have like meters of DNA in our body that is perfectly packaged on these histones. And then we have specific methyl groups. So a methyl group is a carbon with 3 hydrogens attached to it. That's all it is. And it is like Post-it, so your body knows how to tighten and untighten so it can get in there and unroll it. Now, when we talk about SNPs, you hear a lot of word about SNPs. You guys know what SNPs mean?
Single nucleotide polymerization.
Polymorphism.
No.
So polymorphism means change. Okay. So there's only 4 base pairs that code for all of your DNA and your whole biology, and those code for your amino acids, right? What are amino acids?
Proteins. You got proteins.
The proteins that do what?
Everything.
They do everything. So these amino acids, you have 21 of them right now. We found a new one.
Oh.
They chain together like a string of pearls. So you've got like histidine, right? They chain together to fold up to make your biochemistry work. So single nucleotide polymorphisms, these guys are called nucleotides. So you have, do you know what the 4 base pairs are? They're right here, but you can read them.
Guanine,
Sorry.
and uracil or thymine.
Uracil.
Oh.
So uracil's an RNA. We're talking about DNA.
Thymine.
Thymine.
Yeah.
So adenine and thymine pair, guanine and cytosine pair. These, when doctors look at your single nucleotide polymorphisms, it means one of these is wrong. So what they're doing is they're comparing that to volumes, libraries of DNA information that we have on millions of people and saying, okay, well, she's supposed to have an adenine, but she doesn't. She has a thymine. So when you do testing with us, your tests come back as negative, negative. Negative, negative means if it's supposed to be an adenine, it's an adenine. If it's supposed to be a thymine, it's a thymine. If a positive negative means that one parent gave you a base pair that's wrong. So if it's supposed to be an adenine, it's a thymine. If it's supposed to be a thymine, it is a thymine. And a plus plus means that they're both wrong. So that is going to affect this sequence of amino acids. This sequence of amino acids, sometimes if you guys listen to me, you'll see me draw like these curly pictures, or sometimes I post that guy Paco's pictures of molecules, because it matters how these amino acids are folded. They will open and close and cause changes that make you able to use your food. So the science of nutrigenetics or nutrition genetics is just how, if you eat something, how are you coded to convert it from one molecule to another so your body can do something with it. Now, methylation is the foundational pathway for how you rev up your biochemistry, right? So your DNA builds your chemistry. How does it do it? You've got 4 base pairs. When these 2 strands split apart, you come in here and make an RNA copy that goes to your cells, and then your cells put together your amino acids. And your amino acids code for your proteins, and your proteins make your chemical reactions happen. So methylation is responsible for about 250 processes of your biochemical reactions. What is methylation? So methylation means that we take in either folate. Anybody know folate is a B9 vitamin? So anybody know where B9 comes from in your diet?
Is it like fish?
B9 is typically green leafy vegetables, green vegetables. Okay, so you take it in. Can you zoom in on this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you take it in through a folate receptor. So a lot of people come to see us for something called MTHFR because they think MTHFR is the beginning and end of the whole world. MTHFR just means that on your DNA you have a single or a double substitution. That's all it means. So in all of the trillions of base pairs that you have in your body, MTHFR is just one substitution. It's not the beginning of the world. It's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean you're going to die. It just means you have to know what to do with it. But it is responsible for a lot of things. So when you eat folate, you take it in through a folate receptor on your cell. So every cell has a receptor to get it in. Those are called FOLR1 and 2. It's this green box here. And you can have mutations on your DNA for how this receptor is coded, so you can't take your folate into your cell. Then, once you take that in, or you take synthetic vitamins, so your generation has never known a life where all of the processed food in this country wasn't supplemented with synthetic folic acid. And the incidence of folate mutations in the population is upwards of 50%. So before 1994, 1995, we didn't have synthetic folic acid in our food, but the government decided to artificially put folic acid in anything that you eat that's processed. Cereal, donuts, Entenmann's, Hostess, any of those products have synthetic folic acid in them. Then you have to take that folate, that B9 vitamin, and you convert it through a multi-enzyme pathway to make methylfolate. So you have an enzyme called DHFR, you have an enzyme called MTHFD, you have an enzyme called MTHFR. These are all steps for how you put a carbon with 3 hydrogens on the folate. That is your driver for your chemistry. So this guy right here that I call when I'm teaching in the morning the Gucci sign or the Chanel sign is literally just a molecule that you build that goes around to other molecules, giving its information to those molecules. Now, the intermediate is B12. Anybody know where you get B12 in your diet? You were close with your last answer.
Fish.
You get it mostly from meat. Mostly from meat. And the meat is getting it from bacteria that's found in the soil. So your meat is getting it from bacteria that's found in the soil. You get it from seafood, you get it from other sources, but red meat from soil that's been maintained and has B12 in the soil because of bacteria. So truly there is no such thing as a vegan. Because the meat is eating the soil, and the soil has bacteria, and bacteria is alive, and the bunnies are eating the bacteria, and everything that you eat is eating bacteria that is bringing nutrients into you and exchanging information, from what we talked about last week, the sun. So in that sense, there's really no one or nothing on this planet that's consuming energy that's vegan. Okay, so you transfer that methyl group to your B12. You also have enzymes that we check in the B12 pathway at genetic protocol. That drives turnover of your DNA. It drives the acetyl or the methylation of your DNA. It drives turnover of RNA. It drives the building blocks of your proteins. It drives the building blocks of your lipids. And most of all, it drives the production of glutathione. Can you zoom in on this? Okay. So anybody know what glutathione does in your cell? We talked about it a little bit last week when we talked about mitochondria. It clears away the black smoke or the free radicals that we also call reactive oxygen species, which I call polyshore. Did anybody look up who polyshore is? No? Okay. All right. So if you make analogies for yourself and you make it funny, you'll remember it. Okay, so when you methylate, when you transfer the methyl donor to your B12, you drive through this pathway. Methionine makes SAMe, makes homocysteine, right? Anybody know where we get cysteine in our diet? Pork, eggs, cheese. So you really can't live without animal products if you want your chemistry to work right. That drives the production of cystathione, which makes the production of glutathione. So when you do genetic protocol testing, you get how your DNA is coded for this, and this. So you literally can see all of the steps. Now, if you have never eaten a healthy diet, you've never gotten tons of folate, and you've never taken a multivitamin, and you have all of these enzymes knocked out, how bad are you going to feel? Really, really tired, weak. Anytime you consume a toxin or a pesticide or a heavy metal, if glutathione is responsible for eliminating toxins, pesticides, and heavy metals, and you've never eaten a vegetable or ever taken a B9, a methylated B9 or methylfolate, you're going to feel all your reactive oxygen species. You're going to feel, what's the word for that? Inflamed. You're going to feel itis. You're going to have bursitis. You're going to have brain-itis. You're going to have attention deficit. You're going to have brain fatigue. It also drives mitochondrial energy production, so you're going to lack in energy. You're going to have bursitis in your knee. You're going to have plantar fasciitis in your foot. If you're living that way and you're always tired and you're inflamed and no one ever explained to you how the methylation process works, and then you go to a functional doctor who doesn't truly understand how it works, and they say, here, take all of our methylfolate complex and take all of our methylation enhancer. You literally walk around in life feeling depressed, anxious, brain fogged, feeling like you are on fire, right? Sick people, this is how they feel. Your generation, because you're younger and you still have stem cells and some things are still working, you guys are going to feel, I'm talking to a group of 20-year-olds just so you guys know who's in my office. You guys are going to feel depression, anxiety, not be able to sleep, you're going to get diagnosed with bipolar, you're going to feel suicidal. If you are in that state and some functional or naturopath doesn't understand what they're doing with methylation and they give you a bunch of methylfolate and a bunch of methyl B12, it is more powerful than a drug. You'll feel hyped up. You'll start ramping up every pathway. Your neurotransmitters will ramp up. Your brain will be like, oh, I've never seen this before. I'm going to feel hyper and I'm going to feel crazy and I'm going to feel agitated and I'm going to feel nervous. So the key piece of everything that I just explained scientifically is that you have to have this stuff, but if you're really, really sick, you have to take steps to lower inflammation first. So doctors, functional doctors, naturopaths, they call it over-methylation. It's not really over-methylation. It's, can you do damage control on all the inflammation, all the reactive oxygen species? Can you slowly start to do things to fix them? Now, based on our conversation last week, how do you fix inflammation? When we talked about these guys, the power plants that fuel your DNA, what's the best state you can put yourself in to lower inflammation? Ketosis. So ketosis takes your mitochondria and changes you from about 36, let's say, ATP, it depends on the length of the fatty acid, to 120. So if your mitochondria are telling your DNA what to do, just that step of getting carbs out of your diet will increase your energy production so you start to feel better. And then we've got all the stuff we talked about, like the lowering of glutamate, which makes you less nervous, and the production of beta-hydroxybutyrate, which lowers inflammation. We talked about all that last week. Okay. So in our practice, when we start people on methylated Bs, we go really, really slow. Typically, we'll lower their inflammation for 3 or 4 weeks before we do this. But the products that we have are called methylation enhancer. That's a sublingual under the tongue, because some people, we check a gene called gastric intrinsic factor. Some people cannot absorb B12. So we'll give them a chewable methylated B product. It's a little red tablet, for those of you who are watching at home, that you can chew and dissolve under your tongue. It was designed for autistic children who don't want to take vitamins. I'll take one right now. Then we have, will you go grab a methylation topical? Then we have methylfolate complex, which is like a prescription strength methylfolate. This is something you do later down the line. So if you guys at home go look up the literature on methylfolate and dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, depression, anxiety, it's all there. If you have a child or a small child, or if you're fasting, we have methylation topical, which is a topical methylated B. But remember, if you have arthritis, lupus, Sjogren's, inflammatory conditions, and you start those first without taking steps to bring the inflammation down a notch, you might feel pain, inflamed, crazy. It doesn't mean you need it, you just need it later. So a lot of you guys asked questions over the weekend about methylation and what does it all mean. This is the biochemistry, or nutrigenetics, is what genetic protocol does. We send you a cheek swab, you swab your cheek, 3 or 4 weeks later we get your results back, and then we teach you everything you need to know about mitochondria and how your mitochondria respond to sunlight. The key point is, if this methylation pathway drives 250 enzymes in your body to make you feel healthy, the sun drives everything. So when we meet, we go through all of that. Does that make sense?